Hey everybody, it's Matthew. Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to discuss something that's been going on with me for the past week or so, and that is I have been on the hunt for a new music streaming platform after dropping Spotify, and I'm going to give you guys some reasons why you should all maybe drop it too. For those who would like to know, I'm currently using Deezer and it seems pretty good so far. I'm enjoying the experience. I was able to transfer everything over pretty seamlessly. And I did that after a little bit of a fight on Apple Music and dealing with Apple's backend stuff that doesn't work very well when you're not using one of their devices. So I had to very quickly give up on them. But anyway, let's talk about why maybe you want to make a change from Spotify. And I got 5 reasons for you guys why you want to do that. Number one, let's get the most obvious thing out of the way, is the cost of Spotify. When you go and look at other platforms, Spotify is actually one of the more expensive ones. And there's multiple platforms that are actually a lot cheaper than Spotify. Well, not a lot, but in the grand scheme of the numbers we're talking about, it could be a lot. And the main thing is most platforms I've looked at seem to be around the $10.99 mark. Spotify is at least $1 cheaper than that per month. And of course, that doesn't add up to a ton over the course of a year. But I mean, it's a difference, and that little bit could help you somewhere along the way. But does it really make sense to pay more for a platform that basically does the same thing that another one does? It really doesn't. And then when you look at ones like Deezer, if you pay for it on an annual basis, it actually knocks it all the way down to $9 a month, which is a pretty big cost difference. So yeah, the cost is one reason already that maybe you would want to switch. Number 2 is the artist payment structure. Now, it's no secret that streaming platforms don't pay artists a ton in royalties. In fact, the most expensive one is Tidal, and I think they pay like 1.25 cents or 1.15, something like that. Most of the other ones are paying you under a cent per stream. Apple Music will pay exactly a cent per stream, and then the other ones are down below that somewhere. Now, Spotify's range is a third of a cent to half a cent per stream, I think, something like that. Hopefully I've got my decimal places in the right spot. I believe I do. And then YouTube Music for views on the premium subscription is about 0.6 to 0.8 cents, somewhere around there. They do pay artists when they get non-premium streams, but those are a pretty low amount. But we're talking about, using the premium version of any of these platforms. I prefer to pay that money so I don't have to listen to ads and can have my own playlists and can control how many times I want to skip and all those things. So it's nice to pay the money. Plus, with the other platforms, if you pay the money, the artists get paid more. So it makes a lot of sense to do that. Deezer is about in the same range as YouTube. Caveat, it's a little bit weird because they have the way they structure their thing. They have like a pool of things, and if you get like above a certain listener average or something, they will pay you more. So it's an interesting tiered kind of system they have, but at least they're paying everyone something, And if you're doing well, obviously they're going to pay you more, so that's cool. But the main point of this is that in terms of paid versions of these applications, Spotify actually is one of the worst paying ones when you factor in the premium usage, and then the way some other ones structure it is they have a structure that actually rewards you for doing well. Spotify does not. And in fact, we also know that they no longer will pay royalties to songs that have below 1,000 streams. So if you have less than 1,000, you get nothing. No other platform is doing that currently. Now, they all do have some different things you get for that particular threshold, but they're not paying you zero. And number 3, and that is the ghost artist fiasco that I talked about in a previous video on the channel. I'll put a card in for you to watch that. But anyway, we talked about the ghost artist thing, and what that is basically is Spotify going out and paying a producer or somebody to make, random songs. And these are usually like electronic, lo-fi, instrumental stuff, those kinds of things. They go out and pay an amount up front to get a bunch of these songs made for them, and then Spotify has the rights to those, and then they put it back up on their playlists, and then these songs on these playlists passively end up getting like millions of plays that Spotify does not have to pay any royalties to because, well, they own it. So they technically do pay the royalties, but it just goes straight back to them, so they're basically not paying anything. And you might think that's not the worst thing because the people they're paying to make the stuff, maybe they're doing well. No, they're not. These songs usually end up generating an amount of money that is well above what Spotify paid them to get those songs made. So they kind of get screwed out of it, and then they just have these songs in bulk that they flood their playlists with, so they don't have to pay for them and pay any royalties out to them. Which, instead of promoting already existing artists that are making their own stuff and not just putting this in bulk generic stuff on Spotify, instead of promoting them, no, they're going out of their way to get stuff made that they don't have to pay royalties for later. And that's just kind of gross. And number 4 is Spotify's attitude towards AI and how they actually distribute it on the platform. Now, you guys may have heard of the band The Velvet Sundown, which has turned out to be an entirely fake AI-generated band that very quickly amassed over 500,000 monthly listeners being promoted on Spotify. And now you might be wondering, how does a random AI band out of nowhere get 500,000 views? Well, ask Spotify how that happens. Basically, the way to think about that is Spotify was promoting a AI band. That's the only way these artists like this can jump out of nowhere and get these massive monthly listeners right off the jump, is that they get promoted in like a playlist or something, and then they suddenly start popping up. Now, is this entirely Spotify's fault? No, because some people have broken down the streams that fake band has gotten, and it determined that they were consistently growing at a steady rate and gaining the same number of followers and monthly listeners every month, which sounds like they were botting to get to where they are now. But then about, 250,000 of those happened after that point. So it's not great. But once they got in with the botting, then it kind of just spiraled from there. But Spotify does still have some blame when it comes to the AI stuff, because they actively will promote AI made music on their platform. And they don't mark it as AI. They don't tell you anything about it. They just throw it down on the playlist and you listen to it not knowing that it was AI generated. So they're actively promoting AI music. And in fact, there is some information out there indicating that they are trying to make AI music in-house that they then upload onto their platform, which means they're effectively getting music made and paying nothing for it, and then putting it on their playlist, and they own it, so they don't have to pay any royalties for it. So they have to pay $0 for AI music if they have it made in-house and then start promoting it on their playlist and on their platform. And that is some weird, underhanded shit. They're just trying to lower their bottom line as far as possible. They don't really seem to care at all about artists anymore. They will do whatever is necessary to make sure they make the most money while spending the least, even if it's really weird, gross, underhanded, unethical stuff. Now, some of this I say without showing exact proof. There is a lady out there that is a lawyer that specializes in music kind of stuff, and she's been like interviewed by Anthony Fantano on his YouTube channel. So I would direct you to that interview if you want to hear more about this kind of stuff. And I will probably link that in the description so you can find it easily. And now number 5 we get to, which was the main catalyst for why I switched, which I was already thinking about it by this point, but Daniel Ek himself, the CEO of Spotify, is a problem. So last year I made a video talking about some tweets he made that kind of sent the music industry spiraling because there were weird things that he said. And he was talking about stuff, how he was really interested in getting to meaningful artists and music and all this stuff. But then he goes on to talk about how the cost of making music is near zero. And so it's a really weird thing where he's talking about how important interesting emotional music is, but then downplays the value of music itself by saying it's easy to and low cost to make it. And this comes in the wake of the decisions they made to stop paying for songs that had less than 1,000 streams. So the company took an action that made artists paid less. And then he says something in a tweet with wording that devalues it at the same time. And it sort of communicates as him justifying why they did that. Because if it's cheap to make, then why should you pay for it or pay as much for it? You know, no one can really establish the value of art, but intentionally devaluing certain things because you're like, it takes less effort or they haven't been successful enough. That's a super weird way to do it. And I mean, you can watch that video too. I'll leave a card to it. But it was just a super weird tweet that he made that didn't make a whole lot of sense given the music streaming environment, which he's had a very large part in creating. A lot that he's communicated in the past, talking about independent artists and trying to get to interesting, meaningful music, even though his platform is paying for just generic instrumental tracks to flood on playlists and AI, and they're making AI slop, which completely runs counter to that. And that's the main issue, is Daniel Ek says one thing, and then the company does another thing. The company is communicating, we don't care about real artists making real music. We don't care about paying them. We care about lowering our bottom line. And yet he's apparently saying a different tune than that. And that doesn't make any sense. It's like, you're the CEO. If you believed all those things, why is your company doing these things instead that do not communicate that? It's a lot of cognitive dissonance happening here. And that's a big problem when you're the CEO of a company, to publicly communicate a certain ideal that you claim you're upholding while you're not doing things that actually uphold that. And then, of course, the most recent debacle, which was he had a recent big stock cash out, which this isn't a knock on all his stocks and things like that. That's where his net worth mostly comes from, is because when you're the CEO of a big company, before it's public, you get a lot of stock to begin with on the ground floor that does not have that massive value yet because the stock's not publicly traded. But then when it's publicly traded, that stuff gets reclassified, then suddenly it's worth several $1 million, or potentially in his case, billions, although I don't know what his direct compensation from the company has been. But so it's not a knock on that because that's just a thing that happens. But of course, you know, instead of reinvesting that back into music, he accumulates a lot of it and then recently made a decision to make a multi-million-dollar investment into a tech company that specializes in making military tech for drones and things like that, which is, given the current climate around the world of, you know, a few conflicts going on, that seems in really bad taste and not really cool. And it's like, you probably could have used that money for something a lot more productive. But you went for military drone tech, which I'm not saying he shouldn't be allowed to do that. He can do what he wants. But I don't like the fact that he's investing in a company that makes tech for military stuff, and military stuff is used to kill people. So I don't feel very good about, you know, paying for a subscription to a company where the CEO is investing in that. You know, not really cool. There's a lot of other things you could have done. You could have reinvested that back into Spotify to help artists. You could have sent that to, you know, charitable organizations that help musicians and other things like that. You had a lot of options, you know, for something else to do with that money, and that's where you went. Anyway, yeah, the point of that is he's free to invest his money in what he wants. I'm just not going to help him do that, ending my Spotify subscription and going somewhere else. Anyway, guys, that's 5 reasons why you might want to consider dropping Spotify. Like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below if you'd like. As always, don't forget to click the bell so you know when a new video is out on the channel. And with that, I will see you guys next time in another video. Have a good one.